Alright, hello and welcome back. So, where we left off, steps 2 through 5 have been completed. So now I'm ready to start on step 6, which is the lower hull. So I'm going to cut the appropriate parts off and get them ready and get them cleaned up and then come back and start assembling. Alright, I've got the parts all cleaned up and ready to go. So, looking at the instructions, the first part to cement in place is this strip here, and I've already done that. Now, it says, assemble steps 1 through 5 in sequence. This assembly should be performed without interruption. Okay, so 1 is the strip, 2 is this bulkhead slash firewall, 3 are the sides, 4 is the back, and then 5 are the 2 sponson plates. So it would behoove you or whoever to make sure test fit. So first part I'm going to test fit this part here, not much to it, it just fits in the bottom. Okay, and obviously it's going to depend on these sides before you get all crazy. Alright, so make sure these fit into place and see how they fit, because there's like some notches and some tabs and stuff. So that fits up like that. Okay, so that one fits fine. This one here, mainly just to make sure everything is nice and flush. Okay, there's something going on there, so it looks like there's a little bit of flash right there that needs to be removed. So I'll do that real quick like. Some more right there. Looks like this side's got all the flash, the other one doesn't. It's very light, not much to write home about. Okay, so let's put that, let's look at it from this direction. Good, good. All looks good. Yep. Alright, so that all fits fine. Then the tail piece here, it's going to fit along this groove here. So can't really test fit that with it all together, but that fits well there. And then the sponsons, and just kind of a little note here, it's kind of got some nice detail underneath where you'd never ever see it. Pretty cool. But that fits well there. So looks like we're good. So I am going to try and test fit it like this. Yep, that all looks pretty good. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these parts together first, and then attach the other parts. So let me start working on this, and I will come back. So let me explain how I'm doing this, because it says to do 1, 2, and then 3. This is the way I'm doing it, and it seems to be working really well. I first attach this got it in place, held it in there. Nothing's warped on this particular kit, so it's really kind of nice. Got it in place, put a good bead of Tamiya extra thin all along that. Then I got this piece here, put it in place, and this was slightly tilted in, so I just slid it over till it was, the inside of this was flush with the sidewall. Okay, once I got into place, got that in position, I held it in place using my my applicator. I went along the bottom first with a good dose of extra thin. Then I went up the back here, held it in place for a second, and made a nice rigid connection. Then this part right here, I don't know if you can see it, but it's just slightly not touching. So in order to make sure it is, I'll just squeeze it together, put some extra thin on there, hold it for a second, and good to go. All right, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing on this side. That's why it's important to make sure that the parts fit perfectly as an individual piece before you start putting them all together. Because if you put it together and you discover you got something weird going along the bottom, you're not going to be very stoked. So okay, I'm going to hold that in place there. Take my extra thin, put a good dose of it on there. I'm going to pick this up and hold it. Okay, good dose along the bottom edge here. Put a little bit more back here. Okay, then I'm going to kind of hold it in place for a second, being careful not to squeeze any out the bottom and get it stained up. Fingerprints. Okay, so that's all in place. Then put some here. And then squeeze this part up against this piece like I did the last time. A little more. Hold it all together. And voila. So that part's together. That'll give you some good structural integrity for the rest. So sometimes these multi-piece hull tubs, as some people call them, lower hull portions, can be a real pain. But this one does not appear to be so. So I'm gonna let that set up for a second, then I'll come back and we'll test fit that. Okay, now for the back, I'm going to butt it up against this side, make sure this angle on the side plate is in line with the angle on the back. Hold it in place. Put a nice bead of cement on there. Make sure it is likewise lined up correctly on this side. Put a bead of cement there. Kind of squeeze these two edges up against the side plate here and here and here and here. Hold it for a second while it cures. Okay, looks pretty good. Then put some along the bottom here just to make it nice and solid. Keep it all squeezed together. Double check, make sure there's no gaps, you can't see any. It's one of the reasons I like to have a white piece of paper with my bright lights. I can look, and if I see any daylight through there, I know it's not, you know, if the part calls for it, I know it's not lined up properly. So there you go. So that's all nice and together. So I'm gonna let this cure up for a few minutes and then work on the sponson, the lower sponson plates. Okay, so now time to glue these parts on. Now, in looking at this, you know, the engineering on this, again, you'll probably hear me say this a lot. I'm just really digging the way this thing's going together. Right here is a notch that fits underneath this part here. Right here there's a slightly raised portion that fits underneath this plate here. Okay, now this part right here, this part right here, the thickness of this fits into this little tiny gap right there. So it gives a nice positive connecting point on the back. All right, so which is nice. There are some kits, I built one recently, I can't remember which one it was, but it had plates like this, but it just kind of, it fit up against, it fit pretty good, but once you put the whole together, it didn't really line up exactly right, and you had to do a little tweaking. And who knows, I may have to do that on this one too, but we'll see. But then there's a ridge all along here that butts up against this side plate here. So point being is all the connecting points are very positive. And another thing I like about it is I can assemble this like I like to assemble aircraft kits, just a segment at a time. So I can cement this stuff in the back, and because there's this like angled section here, when I put my cement on there, it's gonna leach along there, but it's gonna stop here and not go on down the rest of the way. So I'll be able to do that separately. So I can get this on here, let it cure up really well, and then I can hold this in place and let it cure, apply cement and let it cure up really well. So, you know, it's just, I don't know, maybe a lot of people already know this kind of thing and aren't as thrilled about it as I am, but it's just kind of a good way to engineer the kit to where it fits together like it's supposed to. So I'm going to start back here, put a bead there, put a bead here, and then right there. All right, so that is all setting up. Man, the fit on this thing, there's like no gaps. And I may find some later, but so far, so good. I'm really digging this. Really digging it a lot. It just fits together. You know, a lot of people, and I agree, to me it does some really awesome engineering on their kits. Even their old kits go together really well, but this is just, man, people are always saying how much and how awesome, saying how much they dig Asuka kits, and I can see why. I mean, everybody says that they are just kind of the standard for Sherman kits. So I don't know, I'm gonna have to agree with that. This is so far so good. So I'm gonna hold this in place here and doing it from the inside instead of the outside, because I want this to look all nice and uniform. I'm going to apply my cement here. Tilt it. Okay. and then, man, it's just laying right flat on that. I run a bead of extra thin all along that edge. Now, again, I hope I'm not boring people, but I'm doing this. Number one, I haven't seen a build review of this kit anywhere. I mean, there's print ones, but I haven't seen anything on YouTube or anything actually showing this kit going together. That's why I'm kind of doing it step by step. And again, hopefully, you know, more advanced and intermediate modelers will find it interesting, and maybe I can help them, you know, if they haven't built this kit before, on showing how things can go together. But also, I'm really focusing on I really want my beginner audience to be able to see how easily this goes together. I mean, it looks like a complicated kit. There's lots of parts, but it just, if it fits right, it's going to be so much easier to build, and there's no reason a person couldn't build this even with just bare minimum modeling skills. So that's that part. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other part, and then I'll come back and we'll move on to the next step. And there you have it, the completed lower hull tub. Man, oh Shevitz, it went together just great. Digging it. So, yeah. So, set that aside and let it cure up really well. And then we'll move on to step 7 here, which is the air cleaners. And on to step 8 after that. So I'm going to cut these parts out and get those ready. Alright, here's a little note on the air cleaners. The air cleaners, what I like to do in a case like this is the following. Okay, it has locating pins and corresponding locator holes on this side. Alright, now there are some ejector pin marks along this inner edge here, and that can create like little divots and might have a little bit of flash. And what I normally do, so I get it lined up really well without having to mess with it, especially if the locator pins might be a little bit off or whatever, I just cut the locator pins off and I put it together, and then I apply my cement. That way I can make sure that it's lined up really well. Now, kind of a shortcut here is these air cleaners. There's two sides. There's this flat side, well, not flat, but kind of a, and then this side here that has these two pipe connections or whatever they are. Those face inwards, so you can't see them. You can't see this seam. So if it's not exactly perfectly lined up on that side, it's not that big a deal. Just make sure that it's lined up perfectly on this side. That way you won't have much to do as far as cleanup, and it'll just be a lot easier, especially since there's surface detail. So in a case like this, what I do is I just hold the two pieces together and I apply my cement, let it go through the seam via capillary action, the old famous capillary action. And just make sure it is lined up as closely as humanly possible. Okay, just hold it together for a few minutes. And then set it aside to cure up. And then in the meantime, I can clean up the portion that opens. Let that set up, then I can cement those two parts together, and then I can cement the two smaller parts. So I'm gonna let that cure up, and then I'll glue the rest of the parts together. All right, step 7 and 8 is now complete. Nothing really to talk about here. Everything fits as it should. One thing to note is these pieces here, C25, are not cemented in. Those are left loose so you can adjust the tension on the idlers. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out all the parts for the front next and get ready to assemble that. Alright, all these parts are cut off and cleaned up, and I've started cementing them together. Now here is this part here already cemented together, so let me show you how I did that. And again, this probably isn't any kind of earth-shattering stuff, but I'm going to show you anyway because this seems to be a pretty good way to do it. So what I did is I just got it all lined up. Hold it together with me tweezers, and then only applying cement to the back side carefully on the seam, that way it doesn't seep through to the other side, or if it does, it'll be very minimal. Then move up a few bolts here. Same thing. That way it gets it all nice and even. And then the top portion here. Just like that. No gaps, nice and even, worked really well. And there is a right and a left side, so make sure you keep them separated. And then this one I already glued, obviously. Put it in place. Make sure it is pushed in all the way in the center. And then I'm going to apply my cement from the back here where it comes through the differential cover, and it fits snugly enough that you really don't have to put a whole bunch of cement all over it, because you don't want it to seep up and mar the finish. Alright, and then I think I'll put a little bit right here where it contacts at the bottom. Squish that together. The top is nice and snug if you really want. Don't use very much. Just put a little dab in there, a little dabble do ya, as they used to say, with Brill cream. Look that up, kiddies. Voila, that's in place. Then go on and do the other one. So the other part to do, now it says to do these two pieces as step 4 and then do these as step 5. I've looked at it and it doesn't really make a difference. It's going to work either way. Alright, and then again I'm going to be singing this kit's praises. That thing just fits perfectly right there. So I'm going to hold it in place. I'm going to do the upper part first. Like that. Flip it over. Do it all along the seam there and where it contacts on the bottom, and you have a nice perfect fit. Man, that's some good stuff. So I'm going to glue this other part on this part here after I finish cleaning it up, and then come back and attach it to the front of the lower hull. Alright, so I've got the front portion complete. And here in step 9 as well, I got the fender pieces complete. So that concludes up to step 9. So, which also finishes the first part of the instructions. So the next part of the instructions is 10, where I will start working on the upper hull. So with that, I'm going to call this part quits so it doesn't get too long, and I will continue in the next video with step 10. So thanks for watching Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and I will see you all later.